Bayer, Bach, Brackett, Buckner-Webb, Cameron, Davis, Durst, Fulcher, Getty, Guthrie, Hagedorn, Hyder, Hill, Johnson, Keogh, Lacey, Lakey, Lodge, Martin, McKenzie, Mortimer, Nonini, Nuxel, Patrick, Pierce, Rice, Schmidt, Sidaway, Stennett, Thane, Tippett, Vick, Work, Winder, Bayer, Brackett, Cameron, Durst, Getty, Rice, Work,
Senator Bayer can be added to the roll call. Roll call shows 32 present, 3 absent, excused. Quorum being present, Senate is in order. Senate will advance to the second order of business. Prayer by Chaplain James Weberding and Pledge of Allegiance. We'd ask our friends in the gallery to rise and join us in prayer.
Good morning. In celebrating President's Day today, I was reflecting on the meaning of that, and I believe that we celebrate in part the generous use of power. I think that's at least part of what it's about. You know, I lived in Philadelphia area for several years, and I made frequent visits down to places like Independence Hall and Valley Forge, some of those key locations for our nation's history, and especially George Washington, who we celebrate in particular today. And if you've ever been there, you know that those places inspire awe, because it is forever amazing to recount the personal cost that our founders paid to create our freedoms or to preserve them. It is also inspiring to observe the continued practice of that principle of service today in our civil leaders, as well as in the lives of those senators that we memorialize today. And so it is my hope and prayer for you that you continue to embody that principle of service as well. Let's pray. Almighty God, you are the first ruler to serve others before serving yourself. It remains a thing of beauty when we see it emulated today. Today in particular, we celebrate our American presidents for this reason. In varying degrees, they are the men who have touched the greatest civil power of our time, employed it in service to others, and walked away when their time had come. I pray that you will help each of our elected leaders, our civil servants, and especially our current United States President, to serve in that same spirit. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. We'll now be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by our page, Zachary Barron. Zachary.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Senator Brackett will be recorded present at this order of business. Senate will advance third order of business. Reading corrections to journal.
February 18th, 2013. The Judiciary and Rules Committee reports that the Senate Journal of the proceedings of February 15th, 2013 was read and approved as corrected. Lodge Chairman.
The report will be Filed in the office of Secretary. Senator Davis.
Mr. President, may I have a privilege of the Senate?
You have the floor, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, just process-wise and a roadmap for where we're going to be headed today. It's our intent to go immediately to the 10th order of business, and at that point in time, pick up and do the memorial service for former senators that have passed away in the last year. It is not our intent, while we are in the 10th order of business, to pick up the concurrent resolutions or the gubernatorial appointments that are in there, in that order of business at that time. Once we've completed our service in the 10th order of business, we will then return to the 6th order of business and work our way through the various orders of business until we then return to the 10th order of business. At that time, we intend to pick up the concurrent resolutions and gubernatorial appointments. We will then work through the first, second reading calendars, and then ultimately to our third reading calendar for debate and consideration. With that, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent Senate advance to the 10th order of business.
Prior to advancing, Senator Rice will be recorded present at this order of business. Without objection, Senate advance to 10th order of business. Senate's at the 10th order of business. Motion, consideration of petitions, resolutions, and memorials. Senator Davis.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate go at ease and resolve itself into the Senate memorial service.
Hearing no objection, the Senate will be at ease, subject to call the chair.
Mr. President, personal privilege.
You have the floor.
Thank you. We have a group here today with us that I think is a rather interesting group. It's the Indian Head Academy sitting up here. We have Jim Reed and Jerry Bensi have brought this group of youth with them. They're an interesting school. I want you to get the concept. It's a school within a school. It's the Indian Head Academy that are within the Weiser High School. Mr. Reed is the former superintendent of the Weiser High School. He's now a teacher, and he's also been he was president of the State Superintendent's Association a few years ago, too, so many of you remember him from there. We ask that you welcome them.
Memorial Service Committee will now come to order. First order of business, would Senator Lodge come forward and offer the invocation? While she's doing that, would the Senate and the guests in the gallery please stand and join us in prayer?
Will you join me in prayer? Our Father in heaven, we gather today to remember these senators: W. Dean Van England, Clyde A. Boatwright, Lyle R. Cobbs, Joseph Perry Swisher. Father, we thank their families for the sacrifices they have made so that their senator could serve the citizens of Idaho. We ask that this memorial service bring love, healing, and peace. Father, we also thank you for bringing Senators Craig and Darrington back to join us for this memorial service. We come in the presence of loss, to grieve and reflect on what is meaningful in life. And we ask, Heavenly Father, that these families be uplifted and comforted and in peace. We ask, Lord, that you make us an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let us sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that we may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, and it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen.
Thank you, Senator Lodge. Members of the Senate, distinguished guests and friends, the purpose of this service is to properly present and record in the Senate Journal of the first regular session of the 62nd Idaho Legislature a memorial to 4 outstanding senators who dedicated themselves to serving this great state of Idaho. The first musical number of our service today will be provided by the Boise High Chamber Orchestra under the direction of Wendy Hartman. Those orchestra members are Emma Ryan, Jacqueline Otis, Ian Fauché, and Kathy Otis. Floor is yours. What a fitting opening to the service or to the program today. It's fair to say that our youth give us cause to have great optimism. Thanks again to the Boise High Chamber Orchestra. And we now have before us a memorial for former Senator W. Dean Van Engelen, who served Cache and Minidoka counties. The Secretary will read the memorial.
In the Senate, a Senate memorial, whereas the late Senator W. Dean Van Engelen passed on since the close of the second regular session of the 61st Legislature, to wit, July 11, 2012. Whereas the late Senator W. Dean Van Engelen served in the interest of Cache and Minidoka counties during the 44th through the 46th legislatures of the state of Idaho. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Senate of the first regular session of the 62nd Legislature of the state of Idaho draws public attention by this memorial to the life and works of Senator W. Dean Van Engelen, and be it further resolved that the Senate of the first regular session of the 62nd Idaho Legislature extends to the bereaved family the heartfelt sympathy of this entire body, and be it further resolved that the Secretary of the Senate be, and she is hereby instructed to spread this memorial upon the Journal of the Senate and to mail copies to the W. Dean Van Engelen family.
Senator Cameron.
Mr. President, I move adoption of the memorial.
Heard the motion?
I second the motion.
A motion and a second to adopt the memorial. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The memorial has been adopted. Senator Cameron is recognized to speak on behalf of former Senator W. Dean Van Engelen.
Thank you, Mr. President. It feels a little odd to be sitting in this chair anyhow, and it doesn't quite fit me, but it really feels odd when the owner of this chair is sitting behind me, and I'm sure he will get to speak or want to speak here in just a moment about Senator Van Engelen. Mr. Chairman, if I might, I'm wondering, and I didn't get up here ahead of time, so I'm wondering if we have family members from the Van Engelen family here in attendance, and if they're here, if they would stand.
Would those family members for Senator Van Engelen stand?
Thank you. Thank you for being here, and I'm sure we'll recognize you here in just a moment. Let me talk about Senator Van Engelen. I had the privilege to get to know Senator Van Engelen after his time in service. I really did not know him. I was acquainted with him, but did not know him personally when he served in the Senate. He was born in Burley on September 28, 1929, graduate of high school in 1947 from the Heights Military Academy, Castle Heights Military Academy in Lebanon, Tennessee. He married Sally in 1949, his beloved wife and confidant and best friend. He attended UCLA with Sally and eventually graduated from Washington University in St. Louis in honors in business. He was active, very active in the Republican Party, in Kiwanis, and in the Methodist Church. He passed away in his home on July 11th, 2012, and I think at the time he passed away, he had 7 grandchildren and 1 great-grandchild. I hope I've got that correct. I had the privilege of getting to know Senator Van Engelen as he came to work later back in state government, as he served as Governor Batts' interim Division of Financial Management Director. Senator Van Engelen was a tall, strong individual. He had this strength of personality, and he had this voice that commanded respect. And I always admired that with him. And he was very strong in many other ways. I asked Mr. Jeff Utes, who is our Legislative Service Director, and at the time served as the Budget Office Director, some things about Senator Van Engelen, because he served for a number of years on the Joint Finance and Appropriations Committee, and in many ways paved the way for some of the openness and some of the ways that we do things on the Joint Finance Committee. Some of that passed down from him to Mac Nybar, who was another stalwart from our area, to Atwell Perry, who served as my predecessor as chairman, and hopefully I'm able to carry on the tradition in just a wee little bit. Senator Van England took it upon himself when he was on the Joint Finance and Appropriations Committee. Governor Evans was the governor at the time, and he took it upon himself. They organized a group that they commonly referred to as the Dirty Dozen. This group would meet early morning and build up their resolve to reduce budgets and to promote conservative principles. That later got translated into, when I first became on JFAC, it was then referred to as the Good Guys Club, and it was a group of about 12 members of JFAC who would meet. And by the way, I'm not encouraging any of this, just for some of you who might be on the committee. Today, we do it a little differently. We took from that lead, and that is an open meeting that we now hold with all of the committee members. All 20 of the members are allowed to come and discuss budgets and conservative principles. Senator Van England was, as I said, just this strong, imposing, and had the strength of character. He was a kind man. He was served for years as an auditor to the military. He was immensely qualified, as I've read through, because of his background in accounting. He ran a store in Burley that was called the Van Englands. That was a family store, and it was a chain that had stores throughout the Northwest. I don't remember how many total at one time, but certainly he was a prominent figure in our community and a well-respected member of our community. Mr. Chairman, with that, debate is open.
Are there others who would like to speak on behalf of the late Senator Van England? Senator Darrington, welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'd be pleased and honored to say a few words about Senator Van England. My good seatmate here has already said some of the things that are so important about Senator Van England. But let me give you a little political history of how Senator Van England got involved. He had this department store in Burley. He was active in Republican politics. And in 1970, the Republicans split right down the middle in Cassia County. And as a result, they elected a Democrat senator named Bob Saxvik, who many of you know. And he was a very popular man. He was the manager of the local radio station. He'd been president of the Chamber of Commerce. And then the Republicans tried to regroup and get rid of Saxvik and get a good Republican elected. And Sax was pretty popular. So in 1972, the Republicans had a retired doctor who was well known, who ran. Didn't make it. Sax got reelected. 1974, they had another downtown merchant, a neighboring merchant to Senator Van England, who ran. Many of you know him. He had a store in Boise and other places in Idaho. He didn't get elected. Sax's popularity was still there. Then in the next legislative session, and Senator Craig, excuse me, would correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the legislature passed a bill that had to do with land use planning. And it said counties shall do some land use planning. Now, I don't know the details. It's been a while since I've read it. That wasn't real popular in Cassia County. So Dean Van England decided to run. He'd been active in the local politics there. I was the chairman of the Central Committee. And he ran. The issue was land use planning. I went to Dean and I says, Dean, don't call it land use planning. Just say zoning. People really hate zoning. And sure enough, Dean Van England was able to defeat Bob Saxvik, and many of you know that Bob came on and worked in the governor's office for a long time and had a distinguished career. After that, I think he even spent some time in the Pacific Northwest water thing. But anyway, that's how Senator Van England got to the state Senate. Now, when he got here, it was extraordinarily unusual in those days for a freshman to go on JFAC. Senator Van England went on JFAC. There's a couple of reasons why. One, he was a giant killer. and 2, he had a computer for a brain. Believe me, I don't exaggerate that. And so he went to JFAC, where he served for 6 years in the Idaho State Senate, and as a member of JFAC, and as a leader, the Senate leader of the Dirty Dozen that was alluded to by my seatmate. And the leader of the House leader of that, as I remember correctly, was a House member named Bill Lytle from Coeur d'Alene. And they were the leaders of the Dirty Dozen, and that was referenced by the newspapers frequently. And I know that Senator Van England's goal was to always come in with a balanced budget. Keep government afloat, do what's right, and come in with a balanced budget. And he was quite successful. Well, there's a little more to the story. Because on December 1st, 1982, I called a Republican Central Committee meeting in Cassia County. I had a pretty large organization put together. And Phil Batt was there, who was the lieutenant governor. He was running for governor in the 82 elections against Governor John Evans. And we had a large crowd of people. We probably had 60 people in the room, which is pretty good for us. And Phil Batt, he stands up and he says, I hope you'll support me for governor. And, you know, yay, yay, and all that. And he says, then he dropped a bombshell that was a bit premature. He says, I hope you'll support Senator Van England for state auditor. Well, Senator Van England really would have preferred to make that announcement a month or two later. But that's what he stood up and said, so the cat was out of the bag. I stood up right beside of Phil Batt, right then, and I said, and I hope you'll support me for state senate. And I didn't have a clue of that announcement that was forthcoming. And I got 30 years out of that evening. Well, Van England was in a tough primary, and he was going to run against Joe Williams in the general, and that's another story that I'm not going to share with you. But because he was a great admirer of Joe Williams, and they were, I think it's very fair to say that they were good friends. But he ran against a fellow from eastern Idaho by the name of Nolan Young for the Republican primary. And I told Dean, I says, you got all this legislative support, but you got some work to do over in eastern Idaho. I says, they go in the vote, and they see Young there, and they know he's a great-grandson of Brigham Young, and they see Van England, they know you immigrated in from some strange place. They're going to vote Young, so you got some work to do. Well, Young beat him in the primary. And then, of course, Young was buried in the general election by Joe Williams. Dean Van England was very gracious. He sent 300 or 400 letters out to business folks in Minnecajuland on my behalf to help me get elected. He was extremely supportive. His heart, I never felt, was totally in the retail business. He wanted to go on and do other things. And, of course, as my good seatmate said, he did. And he was right next door to Penny's in downtown Burley and kitty cornered from Roper's. 3 men's stores right there side by side. And I said, it's got to be tough being next door to Penny's. He says, I love it. And it was not good when Penny's moved out of town. He says, because people shop through Penny's, and then they'll wander into my store. He says, it works really well for me. But anyway, he went on to become the state budget director for Governor Batt and did some auditing and put that brain of his to good use in the world of numbers. And so I have a great debt, personal debt, to Senator Van England for the graciousness and the help that he gave me as I came into the Senate. Now, my seatmate mentioned here about his voice and his appearance. Dean was a bit of a tall man. He carried himself very stately and very well. He had a big voice, but it was not an overbearing, deep voice that would drive you out of the room. It was extremely pleasant. And my seatmate mentioned that he commanded respect. When he walked into a room, he's one of those rare types who had a presence. He just had a presence in a room. You all know folks like that. Some of you are like that. He had a presence when he came into a room, and it was noticeable. And at the same time, he had an easy manner about him. You could talk to Dean, and he'd laugh and joke with you. He didn't carry a lot of airs because of his abilities or because of his position in the Senate. He was easy to talk to, and he'd laugh and he explained things. He was just really good that way. So he had a lot of qualities that many of us remember so very, very well. I certainly owe a debt to Dean Van Ingen for what he did for me. The state owes a debt to him for what he did for the state. And there are so many other things about him. One little story that I do remember that I'll share with you. He come up to Boise a lot, as we senators do, and not just during this session. And he'd always say to him, he says, well, Sally and I are going to get in the car and we're going to roll up to Boise. Going to roll up to Boise. I believe he drove a Cadillac in those days. He'd get in the Cadillac and roll up to Boise. I never forgot that. Well, after I started coming to Boise real regular, and by the way, I calculated how many trips I made one time, estimate, and I wore out several vehicles just on the interstate. But then I found out what he was talking about. You couldn't have a nicer highway to get around this state than you have from Burley to Boise. It's wonderful. And so I found out what he meant when he said he was going to roll up to Boise. Well, Mr. Chairman, I've taken too much time, I'm sure. It's good to be back in here for the memorial service today. It's good to see my friends, and I wish you all well. And I so want the family to know the respect and the admiration that I had for Senator Van Ingen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Darrington, for sharing those remarks with us. Any other senators who would like to speak?
Chairman.
Senator Little.
I've served for a brief time on the Dirty Dozen with Dean Van Ingen. I don't put it in my resume. But you know, Dean was one of the, for those of you that have served or are serving on JFAC, Dean was one of the guys you wanted to serve with. He could look at a budget and drill to the bottom line, and then he spent the off season going around and visiting agencies. He was one of those legislators that in the appropriation process really did the work that needed to be done to see that budgeting, that the legislative branch's hand on the budget was legitimate. He did have one soft spot, though, and that was libraries. Because in those meetings, we'd say, we'd start off and be going through the budget, but when you got to libraries, Dean would say, I'll handle that. And if you go look at the history of the appropriation for libraries, there's a heavy influence, and these were pretty tough budget years for Idaho. There's a heavy influence of Dean Van Ingen in the libraries, because that was one of the things that he thought, you can't take that away from people. That's where people have a chance, that was pre-internet, but that was where people had a chance to make a better way of life for themselves by going to the local libraries. And Dean felt passionate about the opportunities that were advanced from there. But he was a great senator, a great member of the floor, and like I say, just an absolute wizard in the budgeting. And it was an honor for my brief time to serve with him, and Idaho will forever be better because of his service. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are there others that would like to speak? Seeing none, Senator Cameron is recognized for closing remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to Senator Darrington and Lieutenant Governor Little. Although you may want to start including that on your resume, it may help it. Senator Van Ingen, it just was a stalwart. I was told, and I don't know whether I should share this or not, but I was told that when he was in the Joint Committee that there were often times with his stature and his voice that he would actually scare state agency heads and a few staff members too. Maybe that's not such a bad thing after all. And I just have to echo the comments that the Lieutenant Governor made and certainly Senator Darrington. The state of Idaho is a better place because of Senator Van Ingen's service. Our Joint Finance and Appropriations Committee is a better process because of him. And our state government, I think, is better because of his service. I am impressed with the number of family members that are here, and obviously the real strength of a man is his is his family and his posterity. And I think you can see by the caliber of people that are here that he is to be commended. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you plan on giving recognition to the families at the end. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cameron. We now have before us a memorial for former Senator Clyde A. Boatwright, who served Bonner and Kootenai counties. The Secretary will read the memorial.
In the Senate, a Senate memorial, whereas the late Senator Clyde A. Boatwright passed on since the close of the second regular session of the 61st Legislature, to wit, September 3, 2012. Whereas the late Senator Clyde A. Boatwright served in the interest of Bonner and Kootenai counties during the 53rd through the 56th legislatures of the state of Idaho. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Senate of the first regular session of the 62nd Legislature of the state of Idaho draws public attention by this memorial to the life and works of Senator Clyde A. Boatwright, and be it further resolved that the Senate of the first regular session of the 62nd Idaho Legislature extends to the bereaved family the heartfelt sympathy of this entire body, and be it further resolved that the Secretary of the Senate be, and she is hereby instructed to spread this memorial upon the Journal of the Senate and to mail copies to the Clyde A. Boatwright family.
Senator Keogh.
I move that the memorial be adopted.
I second the motion.
And a second by Senator Work that the memorial be adopted. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The memorial has been adopted. Senator Keogh, you're recognized to offer remarks.
Thank you. It is my privilege and honor to memorialize with you Senator Clyde Boatwright. Senator Boatwright was born in 1930 in Colorado, and a few years later the family moved to Hanson and then to Twin Falls. He joined the Navy in 1947 at the age of 17, becoming a boatswain's mate, first class, and small arms instructor. He had tours in Korea, Japan, Puerto Rico, Alaska, and San Diego, which included duties on various ships and underwater demolition teams. After 21 years of service, Senator Boatwright retired from the Navy in 1968. Clyde met his wife, Karen, also known as Bing, while both were serving in the Navy, and both were on the U.S. Navy rifle team stationed in San Diego, competing in the West Coast matches and finals in Camp Perry, Ohio. Clyde was all-Navy rifle M1 champion in 1967, and his wife became distinguished rifleman in the M1 competition in 1971, with only 6 other women in the USA at that time. They were married 45 years and had no children. After retirement, Clyde and Bing moved to Idaho in 1968. Clyde was with the Idaho Department of Fish and Game, worked as a private contractor in road construction, had his own bus company known as the Panhandle Area Transit in Coeur d'Alene, was a real estate agent with Century 21, was a member of the North Idaho Fair Board for many years, and went into politics in 1994 as an Idaho state senator, where he served here for 8 years. He was always involved in ranching as well. He also was a dedicated member of the Kalam Temple Shriners and Kootenai Lodge number 24. His wife, Bing, still is alive and lives in Rathdrum. I'm not sure if she was able to come today. I was first elected into this body in 1996, and because Senator Boatwright and I shared Bonner County, I had the opportunity to be on the campaign trail with Senator Boatwright and also to serve with him. It's always a great compliment to a senator to be known in the ways that the good Senator Boatwright is. Many folks that I've talked to in preparation for this talk about Senator Boatwright being a pretty straight shooter. Very fair, even when the differences existed in politics. You always knew where the senator stood. He was an honorable guy. He was honest and forthright, and that is one of the greatest compliments someone can receive. He served on the Joint Finance and Appropriations Committee, and his work focused on placing priority on anti-crime laws, very involved in welfare reform at the time, worked for lower property taxes. He believed in a strong education system, and he was a proponent of fish and game. Senator Boatwright was never afraid to say what was on his mind, even when it was unpopular. I remember being in several town hall type meetings, and as those can sometimes go and get quite heated in divergent interests, Senator Boatwright never backed down from what he thought was right. He was always a straight shooter. And with that, debate is open.
Are there other senators who'd like to speak on behalf of the late Senator Boatwright? Senator Getty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My history with Senator Boatwright goes back a few more years. I think it was 72 or 73. I joined him in an elk camp. We went in 7 miles on horseback. There were 9 of us. There were 6 members of the Navy rifle team, including Senator Boatwright's wife. They thought nothing of reaching out 400 or 500 yards and knocking down an animal. It was cold that year, and when we brought game back to camp, we just stacked frozen quarters behind the tent. And we had a pile as high as the tent ridge pole. There were 7 elk killed that year. Now I'm going to tell you something about around the campfire, so I don't know how valid all this is. But as the good senator from one mentioned, he did serve in the Navy. He did serve in the Korean War. When I grew up, I remember watching Lloyd Bridges in underwater demolition, and that was Clyde Boatwright. He did that stuff. He was also a member of the group of legislators, primarily North Idaho legislators, that stayed at the safari. And this, again, was before I was in this body. But if you went to the safari on Sunday evening, there was always a nice buffet and a whole lot of politics being discussed and what was going on in the next week. The other thing that I remember Senator Boatwright being a champion of was Head Start. He felt that that money was very, very well spent and really contributed to the early education of our young people. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a brief couple of additional comments about Senator Boatwright. I had the honor of having him on the Joint Finance and Appropriations Committee, even as a chairman. He was not a man of a lot of words. And he was not a man that would spend a lot of time debating bills on the Senate floor. He was a rock-solid individual, and when he spoke, people did listen. He was a Navy SEAL, as what has been referred to, and I used to refer to him as my Navy SEAL, because if there was a tough bill or a tough thing that had to be done, I could assign him that, and he was as tough as nails and non-flinching. He wasn't one of these guys that comes back and says, yeah, I'm not sure I can do that. If he got assigned a task, he did it. And that was part of his character and his persona. A great man. And I don't know whether there will be need of his Navy SEAL combat experience in heaven, but if there is, I want him on my team.
Other senators who wish to speak. Senator Vick.
Thank you. Senator Boatwright represented a district that's pretty similar to mine, and although I did not know him when he was a senator, I called him, contacted him before I ran for the Senate to talk to him about the responsibilities and the different areas and how he represented them, and to find out what he thought of the Idaho Senate. And I found him to be very engaging and colorful, and I thought, well, if he's representative of the Idaho Senate, it's probably a very colorful place, and I found it to be a very interesting place to be, and so my experience with him was short. We just spent an hour or so in a small cafe in Hayden, and so my remarks will be short. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Vick. Senator Nonini.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A short story about Senator Boatwright, and I think the good senator from 27 will appreciate this. At the time Senator Boatwright served in the Senate, I was a county chairman for Kootenai County for our Republican Central Committee, and we used to always have our Kootenai County Lincoln Days on Sunday night. and it was very inconvenient for the northern Idaho legislators because of the limited flight schedules prior to Southwest being the force that it is between Spokane and Boise now. But I was in Boise on some, I think, insurance business, and I ran into Senator Boatwright on the street, and we were walking from the safari towards the Capitol, and I was trying to contact all the northern Idaho legislators to make sure they would be up at Lincoln Day on this Sunday night. And Senator Boatwright, and you in the Senate that knew Clyde well, knew his style, and we were walking up the street, and I was pleading with him, and he said, well, JFAC, I've got JFAC in the morning, and how seriously he took his position there, Senator, and that it was important for him to be here on Sunday night so he would be at your committee on that next Monday morning. I remember he took his job down here very seriously, and I think we appreciated that from Senator Boatwright. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are there others? Senator Davis.
Mr. President, or Mr. Chairman, just briefly, when I was first elected to the Senate, I packed the back end of my Ford Explorer and literally purchased the equivalent of an entire new law office, which I set up in my apartment. I had a very vigorous litigation practice at the time, and I may have brought it to the floor. And I brought one of the first notebook computers, and when I was first elected, the seat that I drew was over here along the back, and it used to be one seat more than the four you currently see. And it was Senator Schroeder, and then Senator Stegner, and then myself, and then Senator Andresen, and where Senator Bear is sitting is where Clyde Boatwright, Senator Boatwright, sat. Well, I would come in, and I'd have briefcases to the side, and my cell phone, which at the time was quite small. It was hot technology, but it was a little larger than what we carry today, and notebook computer. And I was talking with attorneys, one on the cell phone and the other here, and also trying to pay attention to what was going on the floor. Well, Senator Andresen, who I had the privilege of going to see both he and Darlene yesterday and visit with them over the loss of their daughter, and he sends his best to the Senate. But we talked about Clyde Boatwright and what wonderful seatmates they were to have for me that first year, but they were pretty plain spoken. And I imagine that there was enough racket going on over where Senator Pierce is sitting that leadership would frequently have to call Senator Andresen and Senator Boatwright to give me the business. And they did. Senator Davis, you can't do that. Oh, well, why can't I? Well, you can't do that. Senator Davis, you need to at least put your hand and cup over it. You're talking too loud. Everybody can hear what you're doing. Oh, okay. Boy, I made more mistakes than all of you combined for all of your service, and I did it that first term in the Idaho State Senate. But I remember Senator Boatwright very similarly to what has been expressed. He was a quiet person on the floor. He had all of his files neatly organized as a military person would. And when the floor never had to call and ask Senator Boatwright if he was ready to do the next bill, because he had it ready to go, and the folder was the next one in order, and he would pick it up and he would read through the debate word for word and comma for comma. And when it said you're supposed to say debate is open, he would read it as debate is open. And then he would sit down, and whenever people had questions about the budget, he would stand and plainly and methodically walk you through the budget that he had to present. They were good people to have as in my first year in the Idaho State Senate. They were plain, which frankly is probably what I need. I benefit daily from it, and when I look around on the floor and I see an occasional Senator Davis moment by each of you, I think of their plain statements to me, and I hope that as I pass them on or others, we might be a little more soft in the plain advice that I was given. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are there others? Seeing none, Senator Keogh is recognized. Oh, I'm sorry. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you.
It's good to have you back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. I won't say too much, but you know how when you come into the Senate, anyone who is serving already seems like they've been here forever and knows everything about the process. And Senator Boatwright was one of those role models for me. I served during a time when the procedure was a little bit different than it is right now. In fact, seniority meant a great deal. And those who had it enjoyed a lot of benefits. Those who didn't have it just simply wished they did. And Senator Boatwright, Senator Lee, Senator Bunderson, Senator Ipsen were some of those who tried to make things as fair as could be made for other senators and especially junior senators. I can remember the debate like Senator Davis described, read word for word. Senator Boatwright would often turn down luncheon engagements with lobbyists so that he could hold court, if you will, in the lunchroom that we used to have, and he truly enjoyed those meals and oftentimes would comment on how food there was so much better than any restaurant in downtown Boise. And that was one of the highlights that he recognized as serving in the Senate. Senator Boatwright was one of the proudest senators I think that I served with. He enjoyed the institution of the Idaho State Senate. He revered that association with other senators, both past and those who came after him. I remember as a young caucus chairman, I would call Senator Boatwright during each of his campaigns and ask him if we could offer any assistance or help. And his standard comment was, "Nope, I believe we've got this one licked." And that was kind of the language that he spoke. I would just like to express my appreciation to those family members who are here today for the service that Senator Boatwright provided to our great state, knowing that he was a significantly proud Idahoan and a true patriot of the United States of America. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. It's always good to have a former pro tem back. Thanks, Senator Geddes, for sharing those remarks. Are there others? Senator Keough is recognized for closing remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Senators for adding your remembrances of Senator Clyde Boatwright. I would just, in closing, say that even upon his retirement from the Senate, Senator Boatwright remained involved, and not a session went by when I didn't hear from the senator about an issue that was still very much at the top of his mind and was still very much at the top of the constituents that we both served mind as well. He stayed involved. He stayed passionate about the issues that he cared about, and he continued to serve the citizens of the state. And with that, debate is closed.
Thank you, Senator Keough. We now have before us a memorial for former Senator Lyle R. Cobbs, who served Ada County. The Secretary will read the memorial.
In the Senate, a Senate memorial, whereas the late Senator Lyle R. Cobbs passed on since the close of the second regular session of the 61st Legislature, to wit, August 10, 2012, whereas the late Senator Lyle R. Cobbs served in the interest of Ada County during the 71st through the 78th Legislatures. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Senate of the first regular session of the 62nd Legislature of the State of Idaho draws public attention by this memorial to the life and works of Senator Lyle R. Cobbs, and be it further resolved that the Senate of the first regular session of the 62nd Idaho Legislature extends to the bereaved family the heartfelt sympathy of this entire body, and be it further resolved that the Secretary of the Senate be, and she is hereby instructed to spread this memorial upon the Journal of the Senate and to mail copies to the Lyle R. Cobbs family.
Senator Pierce.
Mr. President, I move the memorial be adopted.
I second the motion.
Senator Pierce and second by Senator Buckner Webb. The memorial be adopted. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The memorial has been adopted. Now recognize Senator Pierce to speak on behalf of former Senator Lyle R. Cobbs.
Mr. President, Senator Cobbs is before my time, and so I defer my opening debate to Senator Larry Craig.
Senator Craig, welcome to the chambers.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It is a privilege and a pleasure to be back with you and to recognize Senator Cobbs. As this program started today, we were so, I think, delightfully entertained by that Boise High School Chamber Orchestra. Let me give you a little piece of history about that music. It's known as the Arcadian Farewell. The history that pertains to Idaho was that it was made popular by a fiddler violinist by the name of Mark O'Connor. While I was representing Washington County and Weiser and the National Old Time Fiddle Festival, this young kid, 15 years old, came from Seattle, Washington as a trained professional violinist and knocked all the old boys and girls off their feet. He went on to win the national title 3 times in Weiser and is now one of the leading violinist fiddlers of our day in Nashville. He recorded with Yo-Yo Ma, a name that you'll remember, the album Appalachian Spring. And Ken Burns in his Civil War series used that music, if you'll remember, throughout it. So for those students who were here from Weiser this morning, Mark O'Connor made that music popular, and I think our young people from Boise High did it very, very well. Mr. Chairman, members of the Senate, Senator Buckner Webb asked if I would participate with all of you this morning in honoring deceased senators and asked if I would speak on behalf of Senator Lyle R. Cobbs of Boise or Ada County, and I was most honored to be asked. Let me first recognize his wife Donna, who is with us today, and 3 of his and Donna's 4 daughters who are also attending today. As a freshman senator here in 1972 from Washington and Payette County, I was the opposite of Lyle Cobbs. Lyle was a skilled professional businessman from here in Ada County who was serving Ada County very well, and if you were from the rural area, this was the state of Ada. And then there was North Idaho and South Idaho, and one spoke to Spokane and one spoke to Salt Lake, and then there were the rest of us who lived in the hinterlands and represented what I always teased Lyle about as being the true Idaho. But that was not true with Lyle, and I grew to know him as a soft-spoken, very delightful human being, a Christian, a conservative, and someone who I grew to enjoy and sought advice from on a very regular basis. And while I was somewhat different from Lyle in that regard, politically, we grew to be very close friends. And I always enjoyed his friendship and knowing Donna and working on issues that were important to our state. While he was from the state of Ada, he was also a state senator and recognized that responsibility completely and in every way. He also, I believe, should be given credit for Boise State University as one of its outspoken advocates. I remember the discussions between John Barker, chairman of the Education Committee, on what we're going to do with this 2-year college, 3-year, 4-year college called Boise Junior College, then Boise State College, and Lyle Cobbs as the author and sponsor of the legislation that made it a 4-year university. Lyle was very proud of that relationship, represented the state of Ada County very, very well. He served 14 years in the Idaho legislature, 6 years in the House, and 8 years in the Senate. Lyle accepted Jesus Christ as his Savior at the age of 14. I thought it was important that I say that because religion in Lyle and Donna's lives and their families' lives were very, very important. He served as an elder at the University Christian Church and chairman of its board, and he took that responsibility and that as a part of his life very, very seriously. He served our country in the Army, on the frontier or on the front lines in Korea, was honorably discharged in 1953. As I've said, Lyle became a successful businessman, and the community of Boise owes Lyle a great deal. Idaho Properties and real estate was his success. Cobb's investments later. And I used Lyle as a barometer. He was one of those people, after I left here to serve in the House, the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate, I would often call Lyle and say, "What's going on? What are you hearing? What are you thinking?" People like Lyle Cobbs were awfully important to me because I felt I was getting from Lyle a true read of the state of the economy, not only in Ada County, but how he sensed it to be across the state of Idaho. He then went on to serve as chairman of the board of Boise Realtors, as Boise Realtor of the Year. He was a community person. He served as president of the Boise Kiwanis Club, and again he served our citizens after he left the state senate to be the tax judge, one of the tax judges on the Idaho State Board of Tax Appeals. So he was a community person, a state person, but most importantly, he was a devout family man, a religious person who took his service here and his service to his community and his family very, very seriously. So how do I remember Lyle Cobbs? As a loving husband to Donna and a loving father to 4 daughters. I can only guess, as a granddad, what he must have thought of those 11 grandchildren and 5 great-grandchildren. Lyle Cobbs, a devoted Christian and church leader. Lyle Cobbs, a public servant, as a state legislator for 14 years. Lyle Cobbs, a community leader in a growing community, our capital city of Boise. Lyle Cobbs, a very successful businessman and business leader. Lyle Cobbs, a person who gave of his time, who contributed greatly to his state, and for that we should be thankful that we have Lyle Cobbs to do that kind of work. Thank you.
There are others who would like to speak. Senator Winder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had the pleasure of meeting Senator Cobbs when he was Representative Cobbs, and I was a young intern in the House when I was an intern with then Speaker Pete Sanarusa. And Lyle was always one of those people that would help. He always wanted to help you understand what was going on. He spent a lot of time with me just talking to me about the process and what was going on at the time. And it was a interesting time because my brother Don served in the House at that same time, and they served together, and they were lifetime friends. They did real estate deals together. They were involved in a lot of community effort things together. And as I think about other times that my path crossed with Senator Cobbs, his brother was a wonderful preacher at University Christian Church. And over the years, some of you know this, but I was involved in a program called Bible Study Fellowship, and it was hosted by that church for over 24 years, and it was primarily because of the 2 Cobb brothers. And so as we think back about the impact, there were about 250 of us from 70 different churches that showed up every Tuesday night there and basically took over their whole church. But they were very gracious, very accommodating, and I always look back and thank those 2 brothers and the relationship that I started when I was an intern. And Senator Cobbs and I also did a couple of real estate deals throughout our lifetimes, and he's very missed, and he was a great person, contributed in more ways than we have time to enumerate here this morning, and I just thank his family for being here this morning. It's great to see all of you again.
Thank you, Senator Winter. Other senators who wish to speak? Senator Pierce is recognized for closing remarks.
Thank you, Mr. President. Debate is closed.
Thank you, Senator Pierce. We now have before us a memorial for former Senator Joseph Perry Swisher, who served Bannock County. The Secretary will read the memorial.
In the Senate, a Senate memorial, whereas the late Senator Joseph Perry Swisher passed on since the close of the second regular session of the 61st Legislature, to wit, June 6, 2012. Whereas the late Senator Joseph Perry Swisher served in the interest of Bannock County during the 63rd to the 66th Legislatures. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Senate, the first regular session of the 62nd Legislature of the State of Idaho, draws public attention by this memorial to the life and works of Senator Joseph Perry Swisher. And be it further resolved that the Senate of the first regular session of the 62nd Idaho Legislature extends to the bereaved family the heartfelt sympathy of this entire body. And be it further resolved that the Secretary of the Senate be, and she is hereby instructed to spread this memorial upon the Journal of the Senate and to mail copies to Joseph Perry Swisher's family.
Senator Lacey.
I move that the memorial be adopted.
Senator Schmidt.
Second the motion.
I have a motion and a second to adopt the memorial. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the memorial has been adopted. Senator Lacey is recognized to offer opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have the very, very good privilege of presenting an Idaho icon, a name I remember from my youth, as my mother followed his careers and writings and talked about him all the time. As I was getting ready for this presentation, I visited with my mother, who is 91 years old, to find out some additional information. And she informed me that Perry Swisher just showed up in the second grade at St. Margaret's Elementary School in Blackfoot. And she said he was so intelligent and he loved to read. And then she told me that he disappeared in high school. She didn't know what happened to him. And she ran into him again at the Idaho Southern Branch, which is ISU, in a shorthand class. In an article he wrote in 2009, this great lover of journalism wrote an article in the Idaho State Journal mentioning my mother Esperanza and her brother Tony. What a memory to come back from that long ago. Perry Swisher, a longtime Idaho legislator and utilities commissioner, died at the age of 88. Perry was born September 21, 1923 in Bruno, Idaho, and died June 6, 2012 in Boise, Idaho. Perry went to elementary school in Blackfoot, Idaho, graduated from Pocatello High School, received a Certificate of Arts from Idaho Southern Branch, ISU, in 1943, and a bachelor's degree from ISU in 1968. He worked in journalism for many of the papers in southern Idaho and Lewiston, but is best known for his service to the state. He's known as a maverick politician, a man after my heart, and he is mostly responsible for instituting the sales tax in the state of Idaho. He served in the House in 1952 and again 1962 to 1966 as a Republican. He made a run for governor in 1966 as an independent, mostly to save the sales tax, and returned to the House as a Democrat in 1976. In 1979, Perry was appointed to the Public Utilities Commission. His keen sense of what was to come served him well as he pushed for the installation of fiber optics at a time when the internet was far in the future, AT&T was still a monopoly, and party lines were still in existence. It is said that journalism was his love. However, he married what I think was the love of his life, Isabel, known as Nikki, on May 7th, 1948. And hopefully, I believe she's in the building today. I don't know if she's here. I heard that she was in the building. Perry is survived by his wife, Nikki, a son, Larry, 4 grandchildren, 2 great-grandchildren. A son, Eric, died in 2009. A quote was made about him in the writings in his obituary, and it says, "An old Chinese proverb says, when an old person dies, a library burns." It is quite a library as far as Perry was concerned. Thank you.
Is there further remarks on behalf of late Senator Swisher? Senator Craig.
Thank you. I didn't plan to do this, but of course I was serving here while Perry was with us, and I always valued his character and his intellect. And when you speak of an Idaho icon, my guess is that's how he'll be remembered. I was student body president at the University of Idaho, and I enjoyed stirring it up, and I would put Bill Hall and Perry Swisher together in public debates on the campus at the University of Idaho, insisting that Perry take the opposite point of view of Bill Hall. Invariably, Perry would win. For those of you who remember Bill Hall, who wrote at that time for the Lewiston Tribune. In the confirmation debate here on the floor of the Senate for Perry to go to the Public Utility Commission, I don't remember how the debate came out, but I do remember I was one of the few last votes that allowed him, I think he won by just a few, to be a PUC commissioner. And the reason was quite simple. I was mad at the Public Utilities Commission at the time. I wanted Perry to stir it up. I knew that intellectually he could grasp and put his arms around it rather quickly, and he did. And he not only served us well as a PUC commissioner, but he probably, as you've mentioned, helped push us into the 21st century at a time when the status quo was pretty well accepted by our PUC. He was a phenomenally bright character as an individual, and I enjoyed him so much. Thank you.
Others that would like to speak on behalf? Lieutenant Governor Little.
Mr. Chairman, you know, I was going to get up here and say Perry was shy, unassuming, quiet, but he was really a curmudgeon. Perry used to hold court across the street at the coffee shop, and I never went in there where I didn't learn something. After usually significant rear end chewing, but Perry, and he's got a book, and I cannot find it. I read his book. Teresa found it at a yard sale one time. He was grumpy that I didn't pay full retail for it when I told him how I got it. But you know, when he talks about what took place in the 1965 legislature, it really is a great read. And if you get a chance, you ought to get that, because he really was a great Idahoan. He as Senator Craig alluded to, he didn't care who he mixed it up with. He had the uncanny skill to usually get under everybody's skin in the room, yet still get things done. And he will be greatly missed. He was a ranch kid from Owyhee County, and he was a great writer. I'm sure that you could Google and find lots of articles that he wrote. And nobody's going to talk about when he went down to the baseball game in his pajamas with the baseball bat or the chainsaw or the axe. I can't remember which weapon of destruction he was taken down to the baseball game. But those of us that knew Perry, just when we heard it, we just all smiled because it sounded just like him. But he'll be greatly missed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are there any others who would like to speak on behalf of Senator Swisher? Senator Lacey is recognized to offer closing remarks.
I appreciate the other remarks, and we will miss Perry, and with that, the debate is closed.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Lacey. Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before we have this closing number and benediction, I'd just like to express our gratitude to the families who are able to be here, as well as the families and friends of these good senators who are watching this from all parts of the state. I'm sure we didn't catch them all, but I would like to recognize those that we do have their names who are here visiting. From Senator Van England's family, of course, it was mentioned that his wife Sally's here. I'd invite these family members to stand if they're still here, and I know some had to leave early as well. Laurie Anger, Nancy Barrera, Dean and Deanna Lerner, and Ray Moore. From Senator Cobb's family, we have Lee and Lila Croft, Donna Cobbs, Doris Tolman, Braden and Michelle Vickery, and Diane Amon. And I want to express our gratitude to these families. Those of us who serve here, we know that the sacrifice is made by our families. It's by our spouses, it's by our children. It's while we're having fun, they are making the the necessary arrangements, the necessary sacrifices that we can be here, and we do appreciate you. Even though this is a memorial service, I'd like to ask you to help me welcome these families here today. You know, I love these memorial services. It's such a nice time. It comes in the middle of our session of all the hectic things that are going on in this system, and it's a time for us to reflect upon what's really important, and to think about those who have walked these halls, sat in this chamber, and passed those laws that are in those books, those volumes that sit behind us. We are truly grateful for those who have gone before us. I hope that we leave a good legacy to those who come after us as well, because certainly they've done much to make our jobs easier. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to you and Senator Buckner-Webb for putting this together as well.
Thank you, Senator Hill. And to close things out, we have a very special treat, a musical number by Senator Cherie Buckner-Webb, accompanied by Grammy Award winner Randall Coriel. So, welcome.
Flower grows.
Thank you so much, Senator Buckner Webb. And I want to thank Senator Buckner Webb for helping me on this with co-chairing this, and Senator Hill for putting us together. I really hit the lottery when I got to work with Senator Buckner Webb, and thank you so much. I think we see just how deep her talents run. As we wrap up here, you know, it's been said that it can be a sacrifice to serve in the capacity of an elected official, and certainly there's an element of truth to that. But to the family and friends gathered here today to pay tribute to these 4 outstanding men, we want you to know that it's not lost on this body the sacrifice that you as family members have made while your family members are away serving the state. And so we certainly appreciate that. And I know Senator Hill asked you to stand a moment ago and be recognized, but again, with heartfelt appreciation, that we ask that the family and friends of the late Senators Van Engelen, Boatwright, Cobbs, and Swisher please stand again so that we can recognize and properly show our appreciation for you. We will now ask Senator Dean Mortimer if he would come forward and offer our benediction. I want our guests in the gallery rise again as the Senator offers the prayer.
Please pray with me. Our gracious and eternal Father in heaven, we are grateful and thankful for thy ever-watchful eye and love. We thank thee for this state and all of those whom serve her. We are so grateful for those who have participated in this memorial. May all of our lives and theirs be enriched because of it. We are thankful, Father, for the lives and the service of those senators that we have remembered this day. May they and their families know of our appreciation. Father, may we take strength and resolve from their example and use it in our lives as we continue to serve in their footsteps. Father, may thy Spirit guide, direct, and protect us this day. We pray in the name of thy beloved Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Senator Mortimer, and thank you to all who participated in the events today. With that, the committee for the memorial is dissolved, and the Senate will be at ease, subject to the call of the chair.
Senators, we do have a bit of work we need to do yet this morning. But while we're at ease, if you don't mind, my wife does not often join me during a session, but since she doesn't have a teaching assignment today, she joins me today together with my daughter Jill, who lives here in the Valley, and one of you is her senator. I hope you're doing a good job for her. Jill is joined by her three sons, Heath. Heath, would you stand up, please? And then Wade, would you stand up, Wade? Or at least wave. Hi, Wade. And then also Charlie, who's engrossed in Nana's iPad, it looks like. So, and then finally, our daughter Annie also joins us. If you would please welcome a portion of my wonderful family to the Senate.
Senate will come to order. Prior to going to the Senate's 10th order of business, Senate's at the 10th order of business. Senator Cameron will be recognized this order of business. Senator Davis.
Mr. President, just for a quick roadmap as well. Senators, we are in the 10th. I need to return to the 6th. I need to, more than anything else, get to one of the concurrent resolutions, HCR 2, today, because this is the important date that we held it to for a date certain. And so we'll scoot our way through some of the orders. I'm not confident that we'll do any work in the 13th order of business today. So just a heads up on that. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent. Senate return to the 6th order of business.
Objection. Senate return to the 6th order of business. Report to Standing Committee. Senate's at the 6th order of business.
February 18th, 2013, the Judiciary and Rules Committee reports that Senate Bill 1106, 1107, and Senate Bill 1108 have been correctly printed. Lodge Chairman.
Senate Bill 1106 will be referred to the Commerce and Human Resources Committee. Senate Bill 1107 will be referred to the Local Government and Taxation Committee. Senate Bill 1108 will be referred to the State Affairs Committee.
February 15th, 2013, the State Affairs Committee reports it has had under consideration the gubernatorial appointment of Neil Anderson to the Idaho Endowment Fund Investment Board, term to expire December 31st, 2014. The committee recommends that said appointment be confirmed by the Senate. McKenzie, Chairman.
The report of the State Affairs Committee will refer to the 10th order of business held for one legislative day.
February 15th, 2013, the Local Government and Taxation Committee reports out House Bill 72 and Senate Bill 1070 and recommend that they do pass. Sit away, Chairman.
House Bill 72 and Senate Bill 1070 will refer to the 12th order of business. Second reading.
February 15th, 2013, the Finance Committee reports out House Bill 122, 123, Senate Bills 1101, 1102, 1103, and Senate Bill 1104 and recommend they do pass. Cameron, Chairman.
House Bills 122 and 123 and Senate Bills 1101, 1102, 1103, and 1104 will be referred to the 12th order of business. Second reading.
February 15th, 2013, the Judiciary and Rules Committee reports out Senate Bill 1034 and Senate Bill 1035 and recommend that they do pass. Lodge Chairman.
Senate Bills 1034 and 1035 will refer to the second order of business. Second reading.
February 18th, 2013, the Judiciary and Rules Committee reports it has had under consideration the gubernatorial appointments of Anna Janey Dressen to the Commission on Pardons and Parole, term to expire January 1st, 2016. Lisa Bostoff to the Commission on Pardons and Parole, term to expire January 1st, 2015. And Mike Matthews to the Commission on Pardons and Parole, term to expire January 1st, 2016. The committee recommends that said appointments be confirmed by the Senate. Lodge Chairman.
Reports of the Judiciary and Rules Committee will refer to the 10th order of business and held for one legislative day.
There is no further business in the 6th order, Mr. President.
President, I ask unanimous consent. Senate advance to the 9th order of business.
Without objection, Senate advance to the 9th order of business. Messages from the House. Senate's at the 9th order of business.
February 15th, 2013. Mr. President, I transmit herewith House Bill 89, House Bill 100, and House Bill 86, which have passed the House. Alexander, Chief Clerk.
House Bills 89, 100, and 86 will refer to the 11th order of business for introduction.
February 15th, 2013. Mr. President, I transmit herewith enrolled House Bill 14, 15, 22, 23, and House Bill 37 for the signature of the President. Alexander, Chief Clerk.
The President has signed House Bill 14, 15, House Bill 22, House Bill 23, and House Bill 37, and they will be returned to the House.
There is no further business in the ninth order, Mr. President.
Senate will advance the 10th order of business. Senate's at the 10th order of business. Motions, resolutions. And the Senate has for final consideration House Concurrent Resolution number 2. Secretary will read the concurrent resolution.
In the House of Representatives, House Concurrent Resolution Number 2 by Environment, Energy, and Technology Committee, a concurrent resolution stating findings of the legislature and recognizing and congratulating Madison County and its residents for the county centennial anniversary.
Mr. President.
Senator Hill.
President, I ask unanimous consent that further reading of HCR 2 be dispensed with and the journal shows has been read at length.
Hearing no objection, so ordered.
Mr. President, I move the adoption of HCR 2.
Mr. President, I second the motion.
Been moved and seconded that the Senate adopt House Concurrent Resolution number 2. Senator Hill is recognized to open debate on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, today marks the 100th anniversary of Madison County. Madison County was established on February 18th, 1913. It became the 33rd county in the state of Idaho. Idaho Governor John M. Haynes signed the Enabling Act that had been passed by the legislature. There's been a book put together for the centennial of Madison County, and on the front of that book is a picture of Governor Haynes signing that Enabling Act, along with some of our predecessors there. Up until then, Madison County had been part of a very large Fremont County, and when Madison County was originally created, it went clear over to the Wyoming state line. Included the Teton Valley. 2 years later, Teton County was created and kind of was broken off from Madison County and took in that eastern part. The area now known as Madison County was originally settled by a group of Mormon settlers that came up from Logan, Utah. Their leader was Thomas E. Ricks, and from him came the name of Ricksburg or Rexburg from where I come. When they first got here, they lived in dugouts and tents along the South Fork of the Snake River. The area was called Mosquito Flats. By late 1883, 31 cabins had been built in the area, and by the winter of 1894, there were 94 houses. When the railroad reached Madison County, a little town northeast of Rexburg called Newdale, of course it's still there, I went to grade school there in fact, became the third largest grain shipping center in the nation. The Yellowstone Park Special was the name of the train that stopped in Thornton, just south of Rexburg, on its way to Yellowstone Park. In 1913, the people of Madison County gathered together in the LDS Tabernacle, which is still standing. There were about 5,000 people that attended. They had a big barbecue, consisted of 2 steers, 6 pigs, 6 lambs, probably from the Sidaways, I would assume. It did include Teton County back then, remember. And 2,000 loaves of bread. There are now about 40,000 people in Madison County, and today, in about an hour and a half, they'll be celebrating their 100th anniversary. In many ways, I wish I could be there. There's a ceremony at the courthouse. They're going to announce a new Centennial Park that will be opened and created in Rexburg. Tonight they're having a Centennial Ball. My friends and neighbors in Madison County want all of you to have that experience, and so this year, for the first time ever, they're hosting the East Idaho Legislative Tour that will be September 22nd to 24th. There are cards in your mailbox to register for that. I hope you'll take advantage of that. We'd love to have you over there. We're planning on taking you to Yellowstone Bear World, where you can get right up close to grizzlies and black bear and elk and deer and wolves. Senator Sidaway will have to leave his gun outside. You'll get to visit the campus of the second largest university in Idaho, BYU Idaho. You'll get to visit one of their newest buildings, the 435,000 square foot BYU Idaho Center. There's an auditorium there with 15,000 stationary seats and 10 full-size basketball courts in that one facility. We have a lot of fun things planned. I hope you'll come and enjoy your time in Madison County here on our centennial year. It's a great place to do business. It's been a great place to raise a family. I haven't been there the whole 100 years of its history, but I've been there for over half of it. And I'm very grateful that I was able to raise my family there. Thank you, Mr. President. Debate is open.
Debate being open. Further debate. Senator Mortimer.
Mr. President, I would like to commend also Madison County, and I am a product of Madison County, and in fact, it's my great-grandfather, Thomas E. Ricks, that actually was mentioned. And I can remember the stories of that are related because of him. And just perhaps a small short story to add to the history of Madison County is when the early settlers of Madison County were there, I don't know if it was the first winter or the second winter, that they ran out of matches. And Thomas E. was actually given the assignment to ride his horse from current Rexburg to Market Lake, which is now Roberts, and to get some matches. And it was, by the time he arrived in Market Lake, it was very late at night, and he knocked on the door of the shopkeeper and said, "I need some matches." And he had to knock pretty loud, and so he woke up the family, and he came down and said, "Guess what? Do you have any matches?" Yes, I've got some matches. And he offered the matches to Thomas E. and said, "They're $1." And you got to know that my great-grandfather was a German, and he had a short temper. And he said a few words I'm sure that I won't repeat, but he said, $1 for a box of matches? And the shopkeeper said, "Yes, $1." And he went on, being a German, in a few short words, and the shopkeeper said, $2. And that really set my great-grandfather off. And so he went on a little bit longer, and the shopkeeper said, "I'm sorry, I'm not selling them to you at any price." And so by then he had known his mistake, and he started to realize that he was in a serious issue here. And he said, okay, I'll pay the $2. And went to pay the $2, and the shopkeeper said, "You don't understand. You're not getting these matches for any price." And so my great-grandfather had to take his horse and ride his horse from current-day Roberts or Market Lake all the way to Idaho Falls to get matches, and back to Market Lake, which there was no crossing across the Snake River at that time. So had to come back and come all the way around and back to Rexburg because of his stubbornness. Now you know where I get a little of it. Thank you.
That does explain a few things. Further debate. Hearing no further debate, Senator Hill is recognized to close debate.
I'd like to thank the good senator from 30 for sharing that with us, and we're always proud to claim you as a product of Madison County. Mr. President, debate is closed.
Debate being closed. Question is, so House Concurrent Resolution number 2 passed the Senate. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed nay. The ayes have it. The concurrent resolution has passed the Senate, and it will be returned to the House. Senate now has for final consideration the report of the Judiciary and Rules Committee on the appointment of David McCluskey to the State Board of Education. Secretary will read the report.
February 12, 2013, The Judiciary and Rules Committee reports it has had under consideration the gubernatorial appointment of David A. McCluskey to the State Board of Correction, term to expire January 1st, 2019. The committee recommends that said appointment be confirmed by the Senate. Lodge, Chairman.
Senator Lodge.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good Senators, I have the pleasure today of bringing for your consideration.
We need a motion.
Oh, excuse me. I'm so sorry. I was excited about this one, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that the Senate adopt the committee report.
Mr. President, I second the motion.
Been moved and seconded. The Senate adopt the committee report. Senator Lodge is recognized to open debate on the committee report.
Mr. President, I'll start again, and please excuse me. I have a great candidate today, and I was just happy to talk about him. Good Senators, we have today for your consideration the appointment of Dr. David A. McCluskey to the Board of Corrections. And just to refresh your memory, the Board of Corrections is responsible for the oversight and policy making for Idaho's prison system. Dr. McCluskey has professional licenses at the State Board of Medicine, the Idaho Board of Pharmacy, and DEA Controlled Substance Registration Certificate. He has been very active in his community and in this state. He has served on the State Board of Medicine and the State Board of Pharmacy. He has the longest resume, 6 pages, that I have ever had the pleasure of looking through. Just some of his accomplishments include Eagle Scout, Air Force officer, medical doctor, professor, founder of Camp Rainbow Gold for children with cancer, and he raised over $900,000 in donations for that facility. He's a Scoutmaster, started the Twin Falls Soccer Association, Twin Falls High School physician, and he has received numerous awards, Leadership Awards, Volunteer of the Year Award, Outstanding Service Award, and the list goes on and on and on. The past 8 years, Dr. McCluskey has been working providing health care for individuals coming out of the prison system through the Mustard Seed Free Clinic he founded. Health care, mental health, addressing the challenges of aging prison populations, and community reintegration are among his top priorities as he serves on the Board of Corrections. With his vast experience, he will provide great benefits to the Department of Corrections. Dr. McCluskey is a Twin Falls native who earned his bachelor and master's degrees at the University of Idaho. He has been active in civic and charitable organizations in the Twin Falls area for many years and currently practices at St. Luke's Magic Valley Center. Dr. McCluskey is well known to many of us. I had the pleasure of meeting him about 13 years ago, and he's known so much for his good works. But our Secretary, Jennifer Novak, has known Dr. McCluskey personally and very personally for many years. When Jen went to the hospital to give birth to her daughter Marley, the doctor was standing there with a wheelchair. Jen said she was not sure what his expertise was as he kept running into the wall with the wheelchair. I bet that was really comfortable, Jen. Jen has also had the opportunity to scrub up and join him while he was doing surgery, a hip replacement, and at other times. Her aunt was his surgical nurse, and her father remodeled his house. He paves the way. He's a go-getter. He's a self-starter. He is an inspiration to all and has given so much of his time to his community and improving the lives of others. Please join me, good Senators, in supporting the confirmation of this fine public servant to the Board of Corrections. Mr. President, debate is open.
Further debate?
Mr. President.
Senator Hyder.
Mr. President, to endorse Dr. McCluskey of Twin Falls. Dave is such a, I don't know a better man that lives in our city than Dr. David McCluskey. He gives his time so freely to everyone and every organization. As my sons were playing football, I always looked down on the field and there was David McCluskey standing on the sidelines. He didn't miss a game. He cared for the young men who were playing football. He went to all the basketball games, cared for the boys that were playing basketball. He was always there. Dave and I have gone on 2 national jamborees together back to Fort A.P. Hill and taken 40 boys from Twin Falls area back to Fort A.P. Hill on 2 different occasions. And Dave's always gone along as our I say as our mentor, but as our doctor. And he just serves everywhere in our community that he has the opportunity. The Mustard Tree is a free clinic. Anyone can go to the Mustard Tree and receive services from this professional gentleman. When you walk in the new St. Luke's Hospital in Twin Falls, you walk along the hall and you'll see cases that line the hallway of antique type medical instruments and boxes of old type medications and an old body that's open. And these were all the things that David McCluskey, it's a fiberglass or plastic body, it's not a real body, but these are things that Dave has collected all his life and donated to St. Luke's that they might decorate the hall as you walk down the hall of St. Luke's in Twin Falls. They're just not a finer gentleman than Dr. David McCluskey, and it's thrilling to see him accept this appointment and to be appointed to this commission. Thank you.
Further debate on the committee report? Hearing no further debate, Senator Lodge recognized close debate on the committee report.
If it's there to volunteer, Dr. David McCluskey will be there, and he will add a diverse, fresh ideas to the Board of Corrections. And with that, Mr. President, debate is closed.
Debate being closed, the question is, will the Senate adopt the report of the Judiciary and Rules Committee on the appointment of David McCluskey to the Idaho State Board of Corrections? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The report has been adopted, and the governor will be so notified. The Senate now has for final consideration the report of the Health and Welfare Committee on the appointment of Jay Coons to the Hazardous Waste Facility Siting License Application Review Panel. Secretary will read the report.
February 14, 2013, the Health and Welfare Committee reports it has had under consideration the gubernatorial appointment of J.F. Coons to the Hazardous Waste Facility Siting License Application Review Panel, term to expire March 6, 2015. The committee recommends that said appointment be confirmed by the Senate. Hyder, Chairman.
Senator Guthrie.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate adopt the committee report.
Mr. President, second the motion. Been moved and seconded that the Senate adopt the report of the Health and Welfare Committee. Senator Guthrie is recognized to open debate on the committee report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, today I have the pleasure of presenting to you the name of Jay Coons for the Hazardous Waste Facility Siting License Application Review Panel. I hope you can join me along with the gentleman on the second floor in reappointing Mr. Coons to this review panel. He was reappointed on March 30th of 2012, and the term will expire March 6th of 2015. Just a little bit on his qualifications, and when I looked at his resume, I said, wow, I mean, this guy's impressive. And then I noticed that it said that it was a brief resume, and I was really amazed. But just a little bit about Jay. His education, he holds a bachelor's, master's, and doctorate degrees in physics, and with emphasis in engineering physics and mechanical engineering, including nuclear physics at the PhD level. And he currently serves as the professor and chair of nuclear engineering and health physics, reactor administration at the School of Engineering at Idaho State University in Pocatello. And just a little bit about his work experience, and I just picked out a few. In the early 60s, Jay was a nuclear engineer for General Electric at the Idaho Test Station Aircraft Nuclear Propulsion Program. And in the 70s, he was the manager of a reactor technology, including a reactor physics group and 4 critical experiment facilities at the test reactor area at the INEL. And from 83 to 93, Jay was the chairman and Robert Lee Tantum Professor of the Nuclear Engineering Program at the University of Missouri at Columbia. And from 98 to 04, Jay provided a consulting service to the U.S. Department of Energy through the INL on dry fuel processing, spent nuclear fuel shipping, and R&D on decontamination and decommissioning, and also worked for the U.S. Air Force and NASA. Some of his professional society activities include he's a fellow of the American Nuclear Society since 1979 and been a member of that group since 1959. And he's also a fellow of the American Society of Mechanical Engineers. And he has publications listed beyond what I can mention here today. In closing, Jay is at that age where he could have retired a while ago. But we're also fortunate that he's yet to exercise that option, and it's just great to see folks like that with so much experience willing to give to our state. With that, Mr. President and good senators, please join me in confirming this appointment. Mr. President, debate is open.
Further debate? Hearing no further debate, Senator Guthrie is recognized to close debate.
Mr. President, debate is closed.
Debate being closed. Question is, will Senate adopt the report of the Health and Welfare Committee on the appointment of Jay Coons to the Hazardous Waste Facility Siting License Application Review Panel? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The report has been adopted, and the governor will be so notified.
Mr. President.
Senator Winder.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent the Senate advance the 11th order of business.
Without objection, the Senate advance the 11th order of business. Introduction, first reading of bill. Senate's at the 11th order of business.
Mr. President.
Senator Winder.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent that all bills on the first reading be read by number, author, and title only. In the journal show they've been read at length.
Yeah, we'll do that.
In the Senate, Senate Bill number 1109 by Judiciary and Rules Committee, an act relating to annuity contracts to provide that certain exemptions and protections shall not apply to certain annuity contracts. In the Senate, Senate Bill number 1110 by Judiciary and Rules Committee, an act relating to attorney's fees to revise provisions relating to attorney's fees when insurer fails to pay a person entitled.
Senate Bills 1109 and 1110 will refer to the Judiciary and Rules Committee for printing.
In the House of Representatives, House Bill number 89 by Health and Welfare Committee, an act relating to the Physician Assistant Advisory Committee to revise the rate of compensation for the members of the Physician Assistant Advisory Committee. In the House of Representatives, House Bill number 100 by Business Committee, an act relating to the Idaho Opportunity Fund to provide a short title and legislative intent to provide rulemaking authority to the Director of the Department of Commerce. In the House of Representatives, House Bill number 86 by Revenue and Taxation Committee, an act relating to taxes, repealing sections 3, 4, and 5, Chapter 6, Laws of 2012, relating to notice of redetermination or deficiency and notice of levy and distraint.
House Bill 89 will be referred to the Health and Welfare Committee. House Bill 100 will be referred to the Commerce and Human Resources Committee. And House Bill 86 will be referred to the Local Government and Taxation Committee.
There is no further business in the 11th order, Mr. President.
Senate advance the 12th order of business. Senate's at the 12th order of business. Senator
President,
Davis.
I ask unanimous consent that all bills on second reading be read by number and author only, in the journal show they've been read at length.
Hearing no objections, so ordered.
In the House of Representatives, House Bill number 81 by Education Committee. In the House of Representatives, House Bill number 84 by Education Committee. In the House of Representatives, House Bill number 83 by Education Committee. In the House of Representatives, House Bill number 17 by Health and Welfare Committee. In the Senate, Senate Bill number 1003 as amended by Resources and Environment Committee. In the Senate, Senate Bill number 1033 as amended by Judiciary and Rules Committee.
House Bill 81, 84, 83, 17, Senate Bills 1103 as amended, and 1033, excuse me, Senate Bill 1003 as amended, and Senate Bill 1033 as amended will all be referred to the third order of business, third reading calendar.
There's no further business in the 12th order, Mr. President.
Senator Davis. Senate advance 13th order of business, third reading of bills. Senate's at the third reading calendar and
Mr. President.
for final. Senator Davis.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that all bills on third reading be reordered, placing Senate bills at the top, followed by House bills, followed by Senate Bill 1042.
Hearing no objection, the calendar will be so reordered. Senator Davis.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent Senate advance to the 15th order of business.
Without objection, Senate advance 15th order of business, miscellaneous business and adjournment. Senate's at the 15th order of business. Senator Davis.
For some announcements.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, so you're aware, for the rest of this week, it is our intent to come in at 10:30 each morning, except on Wednesday. It is likely that we'll have a slightly later start time. I'll need to work with the morning chairman on that. But other than that, it's our intent to come in at 10:30 for the rest of this week and probably prospectively until notified otherwise. In addition to that, if on your social calendar you could please provide a block out from 4:30 to 6 each day for floor work, I would appreciate it. And depending upon afternoon committee work, and I'll have to work with each of the chairmen individually, we may have to have a later starting time, and we may even be allowed to have a slightly earlier start time. But that'll help us in the management of the aggressive work that is now coming out of committees. We had 14 items come out of the 6th order of business headed to either the 10th order or our 3rd reading calendar. And I know that you would prefer us to stay on top of that. So if you would plan again, Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, 4:30 to 6, and we'll try and give you as much lead time anytime we have to vary from that. We'll soon adjourn till the hour of 10:30 a.m. tomorrow. And prior to adjournment, I ask if there are introductions or announcements.
Senator Brackett.
Mr. President, for an introduction.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. There's some folks in the gallery that I would like to introduce. First, my son, Gus. Gus is an author of children's books. He will be in the Capitol Bookstore for conversation and book signing until 3:30 today. Also in the gallery is my wife, Paula. Paula spends quite a bit of time around the Capitol here, but she's a tour guide, and she's in oftentimes, but I don't get a chance to introduce her. So she is with the family today. Also, my daughter, Lori, and her husband, Jack Blattner. Accompanying them are granddaughters, Emily and Libby. And their big brother, Ross, was here earlier. He's at the Capitol today with Know Your Government. So would you please help me welcome the folks in the gallery? And thank you.
Mr. President.
Senator Winder.
Mr. President, just an announcement. We intend to go into the 14th order probably on Wednesday or Thursday of this week. So whoever has Senate Bill 1018, if you have some amendments up there, please get them to the Secretary when they're ready. But we'll look at either Wednesday or Thursday. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Martin.
Mr. President, for an introduction,
you have the floor.
I'd like to recognize in the gallery, first of all, Emily Phillips, who is a friend of my granddaughter, Amanda. Then also I have two of my daughters, Melissa and Jennifer, and their children, Amanda, Jeremy, Brandon, Justin, Serena, Elena, Travis, Susanna, McKenna, and Johnny. I'd like to welcome them to the gallery. Mr. President.
Senator Martin.
Another introduction, if I may, and then a thank you. My wife is also in the gallery. We celebrate this week our 40th engagement anniversary. It was on the day before Valentine's. I don't know why, the day before that I asked her to marry me, but on Valentine's Day, 40 years ago, we looked for engagement rings. My wife is also in the gallery. Mr. President, one more item, if I may, a thank you. This body did a great deal of service this last week to a great gentleman, Senator Quayne Kenyon. Mr. Kenyon, as you know, reported on 40 sessions of the legislature. He wanted more than anything else to have the opportunity to serve, and I'm grateful that I was able to give that to that man. I don't know the effect that you had upon him, but today he's at the hospital, at the doctor, just for tests, but to make sure he's okay. But thank you again for your service to Mr. Kenyon.
Further announcements. Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, besides Madison County's centennial today, there's a lot of other things to celebrate, not the least of which, of course, is it's being President's Day today. And probably most important is that yesterday was Senator Lee Hyder's birthday. And my wife has built is probably the right word. She has a huge cake in the conference room right out this door for all of you, for your guests, for your children, for anyone who might be in the Capitol. And we invite you to that. She said to let Senator Hyder think it was for him. Okay, so anyway, if you'll join with me in celebrating Senator Hyder's birthday.
Senator Hyder.
Mr. President, I would invite everyone to participate in my cake. Thank you.
Well, by the time Senator Martin's family gets through with it, there might not be much left. Senator Nonini.
Thank you, Mr. President. For an announcement, some of you are aware, most of you are aware that the state boys 5A basketball tournament final was Saturday night out in Nampa. And Kootenai County, it was an all Kootenai County final with Post Falls playing Coeur d'Alene, and I would just like to let the good senator from 4 and 2 know that the high school from District 3 is the state champion. Thank you.
Senator Sidaway.
For an introduction.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have today with us our county commissioner from Jefferson County, Gerald Raymond. I'd like to help you have me welcome him here today. Thank you.
Senator Getty.
Thank you, Mr. President. Unlike the gentleman, the senator from 3, I am an athletic supporter and attended both the Post Falls and Coeur d'Alene girls basketball games on Friday night and the championship on Saturday night. And you won by just the skin of your teeth in overtime. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Nuxall.
Well, I have to brag here too, because the North District 7 won first and third place in the girls 1A championship, and I think District 8 got second.
Congratulations. For their box scores. Senator Davis.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate adjourn till the hour of 10:30 a.m. tomorrow.
Senator Stinnett.
Mr. President, I second the motion.
Moved and seconded. The Senate adjourn till 10:30 tomorrow. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed nay. The ayes have it. We are adjourned.